Eve Echoes is a terrible game. It's so much fun, and the community is so great that I've done little else but just play that one game for nearly 2 years. It has completely destroyed my interest in even trying other games. RIP. Call of Duty. Also, it can't be good for your health. My wife can tell me when I'm in an intense battle, because apparently my heart rate skyrockets and my breathing gets really heavy. It almost ruined my marriage because she thought I was doing naughty things on my phone in the late hours until she realized, no, it's just another PvP fight. My children call me Captain instead of Dad and make all their gaming personas Rainbeard. They are girls. Everything about this game screams addictive Chinese psyops. In short, stay away. Save yourself while you still can. So the time has come. The time for redemption. The time where once and for all we give the honest truth and reality about the situation. Is it a dumpster fire as it's being claimed? Or is it just a victim of angry, disappointed dreams that never became reality? In this video we put out those fires that are nonsense and perhaps light some new ones. I made a post a while ago for you to give me reasons why Eve Echoes is bad. Or the reasons, I should say. I wanted to get as much hate as possible towards Eve Echoes so that I can go through them all thoroughly and see if there is some truth in it today. I also got some private messages, as well as I personally know a bunch of issues that I keep seeing everywhere. In this video we will go through them all. I will compare this game with other mobile games and we see just how bad it is. Blow up that enemy so you ain't scrambled anymore and prepare to warp. As a general thing, I want to say that this game does have some issues.
No shit.
And if any issues weren't brought up by you guys, then I will bring those up at the end. We need to discuss as much as we can and be as transparent and honest as we can. This video is not to prove anything else than what is real and what is exaggerated bullshit. And some stuff has been one way before, that now has changed. That's an important thing to address as well, because people might think it is all just the same. So I've collected all these issues that people have, and now we go through them all. And we start with the first one. Pay for Omega or monthly subscription as general. So the complaint that we even have a subscription is valid. But most games need an income, and asking me then a subscription is not what makes a game bad. It can be seen as expensive, and a one-time fee, as in old days, is all there should be. But it's very common today that games are free on mobile, but have a few ways to gain their income. The subscription is not one of the common ones. The battle pass and other ways to improve the game is where most mobile games head. And Eve Echoes wanted to be like a subscription-based game. So that's why we have it today. And it would not be that bad in itself, but unfortunately, that's not the only way that NetEase asks for income. First of all, you can get the wealth within the game just by acquire Plex with real money, to then sell for in-game currency. We also got the battle pass, with both a basic and an advanced one to improve your game skill faster. We also got random pay to progress boxes with ships, nanocores and even more. The monetization scheme NetEase put up for this game is just as aggressive as other games that we have on mobile. Now a few differences is, in Eve Echoes, what you acquire only gives you small upgrades. That's generally just give you an edge over others. While in other games, or I would say most games give you a flat power upgrade that instantly gives you a win over someone else. So the fact is that NetEase in a way is even more brutal against us in this game monetization, because they don't even give you the upgrade or the power that you would get in other games. Or even more likely, they don't understand this game. They might think that they give more power to players than they actually do, and therefore have decided that this is a working payment, because it works on everything else. And more on this later, but the fact that we have Omega is not a reason to say the game is bad. Omega is too expensive. Here we have an issue that needs a discussion. Plex is too high. Well, is it? Let's see what the problem is and why. Plex is tied to a lot of stuff within the game.
Maybe not your wallet.
For example, AUR and the game income. We can argue that AUR is the biggest problem, but the biggest issue could also be boxes for Plex, or anything that is not related to insurance for Plex. So let's break this down. The game started with Plex at 8,000 each. Now, was that too cheap? I think definitely it was. That's why I kept buying. But everyone who started this game early, they know that the income was really low within the game. 3 million ISK for a Quercer, that's a destroyer, that was a lot of grind. At least 3 days. So grinding 1 million a day was okay for the first week. And that very week, the Plex went from 8,000 to 30,000. Now this put basic Omega at 5.1 million ISK. That was 5 days of farming.
In a Quercer.
Now that was not all you had to get in order to play the game. You needed the Quercer for 3 million. And all this while you ratting in a starved Punisher. And you needed to get overpriced items for fitting. We didn't have the nanocores or implants back then, but it took at least 2 weeks until you had your first batch of 5 million left over to buy basic Omega. Still, it was not that easy. By the second or third week, the Plex got more expensive. And after the first month, the Plex was at 50 to 60,000.
Plex is too damn high.
Maybe it was even more. This did put basic Omega at 10.2 million ISK. It's still extremely cheap compared to today, but it was not easy to save for Plex back then. It was really a grind. Then a bit later came cruisers, Plex continued to climb in price. We reached new tech levels and could make higher encounters to counter this. Still, it was a grind. My Omen worked overtime. And many of you remember this, but if you never played back then I will tell you, it was hard. And since I'm a PvP addicted son of a bitch, I lost a lot. But I killed more. Now that I have painted a picture on how Plex works and what type of king I am, we can continue. As the game developed, we got the Concord Pass, and by then the Plex was about 3 million each. I of course made a fortune back then since I invested hard in Plex when it was below 100,000. But as we all got more effective to grind, we paid more for the Plex. But here's where the first issue arose. The Concord Pass got added. And this was only available to get with AUR. So instead of people buying Plex with wallet money to sell for ISK and filling the Plex market, they used the AUR for the Concord Pass. This severely removed Plex income from market very early. Second issue was the boxes for Plex. So players who invested in Plex stopped selling Plex and used it to open boxes or buying keys instead, also removing Plex from the market. But then something else happened. Capitals were introduced, rising the income to a whole new level. But still, 6 million for a Plex was still easy to get. But now players, and especially new players, paid attention to this. Plex is too expensive.
Man, that's what I've been saying.
Now back then, players who before paid $50 for Plex converted that into a measly 500 million. And if you paid the same amount now, you got 3 billion ISK. It's also very unfair.
What a bunch of idiots.
And all new players never got to feel that sucker punch. More stuff got added and the income was higher yet again. Special anomalies and cap anomalies was introduced to please players' drive to make even more ISK. But NetEase made a huge issue about this time. You see, before this, the game has advanced almost accordingly to the income, but it was not entirely accurate. It was for sure advancing, but it was for a specific player base, the capital players, the players on the top, the ones who played the longest or have the most. But this was not the issue. NetEase made a fundamental change, so at the same time, the game was pushing the Plex prices with the rate of those who could farm the best and make the more ISK each hour. They made the Plex less valuable than AUR. This almost killed the Plex market 3 times. Now there was no reason to purchase AUR for Plex, because if 100 Plex gave you, let's say, 1 billion ISK, 100 AUR gave you 2 billion if you invested in AUR boxes. This was a shit show. This skyrocketed the Plex from 7 million to 9 million a few times very rapidly. And this was not according to cap farming. This was a bad time, and honestly I thought the game was going to shit. Not because the prices was high, but since NetEase could not see this coming. It was dark times. And at that time, it was fair to say the Plex prices was too high. Cause it was. Now today Plex is at 9 or close to 10 million each, and it is still a bit high. Now personally I make that in a week, and most Tech 10 does, so the difference ain't that different. The grind is the same, but the Plex is too high for new players, or not players that has reached at least Tech 9. I would say Tech 10 cause then you can handle it with encounters even in high sec, and enjoy those high sec island heroes. But generally, Tech 8 and 9 can grind Omega if you are in a null sec corp. but the Plex ain't high because it's a large number. And the biggest issue for new players is the overall income. And if you're not in a capital, then the ISK tick that you gain for sure is not enough. The issue is also that the loot is valued too low. If you ask me today if Plex is too high, I would say yeah. If Plex would have been 7 million, I would say no. It's not that bad. Even NetEase agree that it is high and want to lower it as well. They know the issue they made and they just have a hard time fixing it. It might seem harsh, but the game is not made for short gameplay. It's a long investment. It takes tons of time as you make friends and do several things. It is not catering to new players, and I'm sure this will be an issue that we discuss later in this video. But making Plex too cheap only makes the top players buy it all. We already have players with 100,000 Plex and even more. And even if that would not be the case, then a too low Plex price, well basically too easy Omega, would remove the trouble that for some people is enough just to pay the Omega. And in that case we would remove one income to NetEase that, without a doubt, would change the game drastically. So a game with 2 easy Omega, aka no subscription, would result in a game with even more pay to win boxes. Is the Plex in this game too high? Yeah, it kinda is, but it's not that high. And definitely not so high that it makes a game bad. Stop blaming Plex, get good. Pay to win boxes. So this question can seem like the previous one, but we will discuss the boxes themselves, and not that they sell the boxes overall. The boxes we usually refer to is the boxes that give us advantage, in some cases nanocores, but also implant materials and more. Personally, I do not like this, but for the game I'd say it's a way to stay alive, I guess. Mobile games rely heavy on a steady income from players here and there. It's almost like that's the way to see if a game is successful today. How much money does it earn? Fair gameplay is important for almost any game, but it's only important if you the gamer think it matters. Of course, we are all competitive in our own way, and this unfair normalized way of progression is making games harder than other to compete within. And while that is true, it's easy to treat mobile games like any other games, for example on PC, but mobile games is not made for players like that. Games on mobile started out for casual short session non-gamers, players who don't really play games, or people who don't have a PC or console. You might wonder about the reason, and the reason is broader audience. Now a mobile is a device that everyone owns, so simple yet addictive games was of course invented. The mobile market quickly made more money than PC and console market, and they now have statistics on what makes people pay the most. This is the formula that most mobile games uses. Diablo Immortal using the same formula, Raid Shadow Legends uses the same, and games like those with a power growth is really forcing you to invest to even compete. Now boxes in EVE Echoes is less damaging. The bonuses you get ain't that strong, and since you never know what you face, you can just as easy lose your ship. Some nanocores have warp core stabs, and that effect kinda helps you get away. And if you want to put real money to save some ISK by dying less often, then fine. It's not a big deal for the game. The boxes with materials, on the other hand, does hurt the game. Boxes that hinder that materials get used up hurt the game. For example, implants and implant material boxes. Not only is it unfair to get stuff quicker, but the materials flood the market and devalue the materials. This lessens the income that players have, and it is also a factor that is making it hard to make ISK. Also, the boxes with chips cripples the market, which should be the backbone in this game. Now I don't mind them selling new chips in boxes, let's say for the first week. Some people don't have the time to play as much, and in a mobile game, I can understand that they want a way to progress with a wallet. But they keep adding older chips to the boxes, and this is one of the biggest reasons that industry ain't as good as it could be. So this one is definitely a valid point. The boxes with materials is bad. Nanocores, pay to win. Nanocores is no more pay to win than the Plex itself. If you are rich and dedicated enough to waste your life, you can purchase Plex to your heart's content and get both the implants to the max and the biggest chips. And you really think that the nanocore is pay to win? It is true that a player with a nanocore versus a player without a nanocore is a big difference, but a slightly better purple nanocore versus a less good nanocore is not that huge. And there are some nanocores that are really bad. But for example, the Trailblazer nanocore is a really good core that anyone can get. It's even a great core for mining vessels. Nanocore is pay to win is laughable, cause that shows how little you really understand about the progress in this game. If you would have said Plex is pay to win, I would say for sure. But nanocores is pay to win. Give me a break. It's just a way to dilute the reasons not to play this game. Insurance. Okay, I've been addressing this several times before, but it's worth discussing again. Yes, you got some great solutions in your other videos, Chief. Insurance in itself is not a bad thing, but the insurance in EVE Echoes is directly tied to the market and Plex. There's a question regards how many items insurance actually removes from market upon claim. But for the first 2 years, it wasn't that much. This feature is making ships and items reusable, and therefore directly damaging the industry. Since ships can be reusable, the need for excess ship is not that important. The need for ships then is corresponding to how many players we have in the game, and not depending on how many ships gets blown up. NetEase is actively trying to fix the insurance in their own way, and we do see that they do, but it's still not enough. Insurance is a big issue, and I would say it's a big reason why many players leave EVE Echoes. Now there's a few solutions that would fix this insurance, and I've made an insurance video where I go deep on this, but one easy thing that they could do, and most people agree on, is to make insurance points only pay out ISK. This would solve a lot of issues, and the industry would be a lot better. But it would also create another issue, and that is insurance fraud. NetEase claims to have issues monitoring their values correctly, and that's no question about that. But this is the main reason they say we can't have ISK-based insurance. But I don't think that's the truth. I think NetEase wants control. With this insurance, they can directly supply and demand the items and the ships, making boxes more attractive for their own gain. Insurance in EVE Echoes, the way it works today, is the worst thing for the game. I could personally think this is okay if it would only work for new players, but generally we would be better off without it altogether. Now before you say anything, I will explain what's on your mind. Chief, do you think anyone would fly the new capitals if there was no insurance? Well, I think so, because without the insurance, the market in the game would look different. The capitals would not be this expensive, and this is due to many reasons. So honestly, the loss that we do today would probably be the same without the insurance. An industry would have a bigger impact, making more players play the game, pushing prices lower, more close to a real economy. Prices today is slowly recovering, but it's taking way too long. Building profit is today actually okay for some items and ships, but of course not everything. You need to do your research before you wanna build stuff, but insurance is a reason that can't be argued away. Developers' promises and lies. Now may I ask, is this your first game? Are you so shocked that stuff didn't turn out the way you imagined? And yes, I say you imagined, because not only does the industry of gaming lie everywhere, but stuff that they explain or say might not appear as you understood it to be. I'm not saying that I think lying is okay. I'm saying you should take everything with a grain of salt. Sure, NetEase said they would not have any payment for progress or pay to win. They would only have the Omega. That turned out to be not the case. But there's only an honorable few who can say this and keep that promise. And with years of companies lying, and Diablo Immortal claimed the exact same thing, a power game that only relies on power did get so much microtransaction that it's unplayable. Now I'm joking, you can of course casually play without. But how could this be a shock to you? Maybe you say it wasn't a shock. Maybe just a bad thing to do, then sure, I agree. But honestly, this does not make a game bad. This made players butthurt for sure, and even I was displeased. But so was the players who paid hundreds of dollars for just a few hundred ISK in the beginning of the game. The only thing this does is making us unaware of future updates. What will be true or not? This is NetEase loss, and they are the one who really lose with all this lying. We just brushed that off, and this really does not impact the game if the game is good. No great PvP experience. I have to say I was not expecting this one. Since everyone experienced stuff differently, I cannot say what's true here. Some people love PvP and are good at it, and they think the game is good. Others love PvP but they suck at it. They might think the game sucks. Others mine and they don't have an opinion. Now what we can talk about is if the PvP is fair. In this game we generally fight new fights and new opponents every time. We are never sure if it will be fair in terms of 1 versus 1, so the game is not fair. You will always be overrun with an opposing force, similar to Thanos' Rage. But is the PvP fair in terms of pay to win? And again, no. It doesn't actually matter if you bring a fleet of capitals to fight. The enemies can always bring more. And alliances will always have their whales with their infinite Plex to support their kingdom. So the game is pay to win. There's no doubt about it. That's a valid reason to step away from the game. But what's not fair is the notion that EVE Echoes sucks compared to EVE Online, because it's pay to win. Because all the aspects that is unfair that I have been talking about is just as vital and accessible on EVE Online. So whatever you heard, EVE Echoes is not much more pay to win than EVE Online. Gold nanocore and AFK farming. The way to upgrade purple nanocore into golden for that extra attribute is accessible for everyone. It's a long investment to get there, but it's not as long as upgrading your implants. The bonuses of having a golden nanocore is quite substantial, but the price to upgrade it's pretty high as well. And in higher levels, it's impossible without real money. So most players upgrade to level 3, cause then it gets real expensive. This is as of now the endgame of nanocores. This is what you will strive for on your favorite chip, and it takes a long time. Now the other bonuses you get for having a golden nanocore is the possibility to farm AFK. Not for free, but if you invest about 4 billion in materials, or ISK, you can activate that chip for AI. Now how bad is the AI for the game? Well, the AI on a battleship is around 4 billion ISK, and you can let it run for 8 hours a day. And the tick is around 20 million. I also have a detailed video about AI for more exact information, but it takes about half a year for AI to farm back those 4 billion that you invested. That's about a week of farming for basic Omega. Oh, fancy that. Just as it's always been. So if you like to melt your phone every day while talking on your landline, this is one way to do it. Most players do not run this 8 hours a day, and there is way quicker ways to make more risk. So is AI the big culprit in EVE Echoes' failed economy? Is it the reason that the Plex is high? No, it's just a way to automate some boring stuff that's, quite frankly, ain't good to begin with. But it's convenient for solo players and casual gamers. Crying about AI being an issue, and therefore the game sucks, is not valid at all. High tier content locked behind capitals. This is unfortunately true. The best ISK income is the capitals. The most reliable income is the capitals, even if capitals meets their doom quite often. And if you ask netties, then they do feel that the capitals is the normal ships. This is why we get content for those, and not the sub-capital ships. In my opinion, I feel it's very lazy to only give us new anomalies and situations, or missions, for capitals, and not the counterpart for smaller ships. What's the issue of making those for frigates? Now sure, we have Kalevala for all types of tonnage, but there was a time where we only saw capital events. The Science Sea that was released in Highsec became the king of farming in islands, arguably making at least some dent in the Plex prices, and is somewhat an issue. It's not so bad, and the game would have countered it, but as of now it's almost a 100% safe way of creating a good amount of ISK. But it also cost you close to 70 billion fully fitted, and again, it can be acquired from boxes, if you're lucky, or rich. The capital focus is an issue in this game, but it's not unnecessary. We basically just missed the lower tier stuff to do, and since netties have a small team they can't give us both, apparently, and then they focus on stuff that binds you within the game, stuff that brings in the money to the company. But of course, we do see some change today, but it took many years. And most people gave up. Bad new player help or experience. Have you noticed that it's better? When a year ago, after the new experience update, I felt it was, as a first impression, a lot better. Now granted, I know the game. It's very hard to see this game with new eyes. But since it's a sandbox, you are free to do everything in your own pace. And this allows EVE Echoes players to miss out on important game points. Generally, as a gamer, we want to skip tutorials and get on with the game. And of course, this happens as well in this game. The issue here is, and I'm guilty of doing the same thing, for example in those space station building games, I know what the game will look like and I know that it will not be fun, for me, so I just quit. And I'm afraid that EVE Echoes can give that appearance to totally new players too. This unfortunate lack of knowledge is the game's biggest issue. Some players come from EVE Online and think that the game is the same. Others have never experienced anything like this and of course will try to place it somewhere. Even if I feel the introduction to EVE Echoes is quite detailed, I don't think the first hours of EVE Echoes is not faithful enough for the game. It should show something like real PvP fights with real people talking. It should show a learning curve and a reliable player and ship growth right at the beginning. Then it could follow with what we have today. I think it has a great middle ground, not too intricate and also being true to mobile games and give a grasp idea on how stuff works. But as I said, I feel that the feeling is missing. The feeling only players of EVE Online or Albion Online actually would have. A sense of a future empire filled with a great community, that mixing hard players with adamant industrialists. A game where whatever you do matters, and this is you making your impact on others. Takes too long to get to tech level. Yes, it does. But more important, it takes too long to advance enough to be able to, with hard work, being self-sustained. And this might be NetEase's idea. Making sure that new players cannot pay for their Omega, forcing them to pay the game early on. Cause at tech level 10, you can get Omega with ISK. This is where we see that there is no amount of ISK that we cannot collect. And this is probably why we see the AOR nanocores for capitals only. The stuff you definitely should not buy if you want to support a more fair game. The tech level today is about 2 years of duo Omega to reach tech 10. This is way too long. If we cannot get NetEase to remove that tech level, which I don't think we can, we need to push them as much as we can to lower the requirements. They have been talking about releasing battleships for low tech level, almost like beginner battleships. But those are yet to be seen. So far alphas can only fly faction battleships with limited skills, but if tech levels would have been lowered to 1 year total, this would have been a great change. If you ask me, I feel 6 months would suffice. In this time players would learn most of the game, made enough ISK to support their new ships and modules, as well hopefully found a home in a corporation. So the tech level in EVE Echoes is a big mountain to climb, even for players who know what the game is all about. And 2 years of paying for a game until you can fly the bigger ships does push new players away, even those who like the game. The game is too hard. Ship, fittings and mechanics. I don't think this is fair to say. Well, personally you can feel this way, just as I feel that Bloodborne is hella hard and therefore boring. But game-wise, EVE Echoes or any other game that is very hard does not make a game bad. EVE Echoes is casual but not on every part. PvP can be really tough, while mining is very chill and relaxing. If the game is too hard for you, then I'm sorry. The game is not for you. But unfortunately, the game would not be better if it were easy. Boring to grind. This is a fact. But it's also a mechanic. In EVE Echoes, the farming is the work you do while you ponder over fittings or planning your possible attack, or roam. It is the downside before the upside. If everything is fun, then that removes some joy eventually. So having boring parts is not a bad thing. But if you are a low tech level player, and you need to farm 40 hours a week just to provide with your Omega, then I totally understand. If you are a miner and you mine every day, selling the materials to just repeat the same thing the very next day, I can see the issue. But even roaming with a corporation every day can feel boring after a while. Try to mix it up, do more things than one, and that's a tip for real life as well. 2 big upgrades, nanocores and implants. I've touched on nanocore earlier in this video, so check that out if you missed it. But nanocores is not a big upgrade. On the other hand, implants are. Implants are huge and really changed the PvP in EVE Echoes. It's also insanely expensive. Luckily you only need level 15 to be competitive, but maxing a level 45 is very rare and should only be done on the implants that you really need. It's at least 100 billion ISK, so choose it with caution. Implants is the latest and worst thing that we got within the game. I want to clarify that I do not hate it, and today I'm aware and I use them. But I still think it was way too powerful, and I still think it is. Implants today is as important as the chip itself. And it's the major pay to win that we got. But for 2 or 3 billion ISK, you have level 15, and that's not bad. No moon mining. Yep, that sucks. Give us now. Well, yes it is. It's a mobile game. But if you come from EVE Online, no, it's not more than EVE Online. And definitely not more than any other mobile game. We got a few parts that are more pay to win than others. But in this game, you can lose even if you spend the most. And you can beat the bigger spender without spending. It's an unfair game with an unfair pay to win and unfair PvP. And this is actually what makes the game exciting. But unfortunately, without spending, you will not get those special medals or gifts that are given out to those who spend the most. But you can still make those people lose it all. You can't build ships for profit. This is totally wrong. Minerals today is good. And if you do PI, you make more ISK than you ever did. The reason you don't make a profit selling the ships would be number 1, if you don't have the skills to build and sell. Number 2, you build the wrong ships. Do your research before building and make sure that you sell the ships that players buy at the right time. Maybe my market video can help you with that, so check those out. Hard to solo PvP. Solo PvP have the wrong reputation. Solo PvP is not something that the best players do. It's also not the ones with the biggest balls, cause I would argue PvP in a capital would be. But solo PvP is extremely hard. Because not only do you need to understand the game on a different level, you also need to be patient, and all the solo PvP videos you see when checking videos like that out is hours upon hours of fights. And hours upon hours of nothing. Most of the times, as a solo player, you meet a fleet of other players. And then depending on what type of PvPer you are, you need to make a decision. Leave or fight. And to fight a fleet of players, or even 2 or 3, is not easy. In a fight you will need to think about what you are fighting, what chip you have, your optimal, their optimal, and when to use your modules, and when you want to trick your opponent to think that you're losing. You need to be aware of local, you need to be aware if the opponents have a fitting that you expect, or not, or if he's trapping you. Solo PvP ain't easy, and that's why we love it. Yeah, lowsec is as active as NetEase support. You might turn and look for a punchline, there is none. That's just the truth. Now there's some small stuff that I want to add that makes this game less good. And it's about that all capital nanocores is locked behind real money. Even the Frighter nanocores is not achievable with in-game currency. I also think that the absence of Plex at times was really bad, making it impossible to buy the Omega without real money. Now after we have gone through all of these issues, there is one more thing that could put EVE Echoes in a bad state. The sum of all fears. The collection of issues that makes this game EVE Echoes. Because one thing is easy avoidable, but does all the stuff that we said make up for a bad game? Or does all the positive things take over, making this game more good than bad? I think now you all have a good feeling on what you personally think. Because in the end, it's you who decide. Can you live with the issue that we have and enjoy the game? Or does it not hold up at the end? Because even if I did agree with a few points here and there, most of them ain't bad enough to push me away from the game. And even if this video was way longer than I thought it was going to be, I don't think I want to know how long the opposite video would be, stating everything that's good. So if you stuck with me all the way to this end, and you ain't playing the game, you now know exactly how fair the game is. And of course, if you want to know in detail what the game is and how it's played, then check my EVE Echoes videos. You will get tips and help in many ways to reach further faster. I also have given away about 300 billion ISK in ships through my various giveaways, competitions and live streams, and I plan on doing more. So maybe I see you guys then. Give a like and subscribe if you want to be so kind, and I will work on sending various fun content your way. And I see you again.